right, I'm Gary.
This is Austin.
And we are Midwest Mike's coming back at you live from the UClick TV studios right here inside the Hy-Vee Arena. Another great week, starting July off. We're going to get some live sports back this month. Feels like forever since we've got to watch a live sporting event, but as always, Jim's up there too behind the scenes, making us look and sound good this week. But how was your week, man?
Week was good, and it's funny, we talk about live sports, so the English Premier League's actually started up, and they're making up for lost games, so I've been watching a lot of soccer. So if you like soccer, that's going on. The Germans also had their league was going too, so that I never really got into the Korean baseball stuff, but yeah, so I've been watching that stuff. No, week's been good, just same as normal, just working and dealing with COVID and all that stuff. So, but yeah, it's good. It's good to be here.
Yeah, definitely. Always good. Our guest this week is Katherine Fox from the Kansas City Sports Commission. Those of you that may not be familiar with the Kansas City Sports Commission, they do a lot of behind-the-scenes things to make the sports scene in Kansas City as great as it can be. They're responsible for organizing things like the Super Bowl parade. They do an awards show every year. They are the team that is responsible for getting us the draft in 2023. So, Katherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We have the Worth the Wait, little plug there for Boulevard,
nice.
Local company.
Hot off the bottling.
Yes. Just came out a week or so ago. You are a Kansas City born
native?
and raised,
yeah,
right?
born and raised in Kansas City. I went to college in Connecticut and then lived in New York City for about 12 years and then San Francisco and made my way back to Kansas City in late 2015 and actually started with the Sports Commission in January of 2016.
Nice.
Yeah.
In your bio, it says that you were worked on the property side at Madison Square Garden for a time, kind of billed as the world's most famous arena.
Yes.
How was that, and what are some events that you helped bring to Madison Square Garden?
So my role there was a little bit different than what it is at the Sports Commission. When I was in New York, I was on the agency side, and I was managing Madison Square Garden's partnership with American Express. At the time, J.P. Morgan Chase was sort of getting more into the sponsorship world. They wanted to acquire some assets that they could basically offer to their cardholders as benefits. They hadn't really done that. American Express had really mastered that model. Chase wanted to sort of enter that market in a big way in their own backyard in New York City. The partnership between American Express and Madison Square Garden was up for renewal, and Chase kind of came in, and they had a lot more resources available than American Express. At the time, American Express was paying about $7 million a year to be the official credit card of Madison Square Garden, which involved all of their venues, right? So a lot of people don't realize it's Madison Square Garden. They own the Forum, the Beacon Theater in Manhattan, the Chicago Theater, Radio City Music Hall. So there's a lot of venues, and then there was a media side. So there were a couple networks, Fuse and MSG Network, and then the entertainment side. So it's a three-pronged business, basically. And at the time, again, American Express had about $7 million invested towards that partnership. Chase came in and essentially offered $40 million for 12-year contract with an escalator built in over those 12 years. So it was simply an offer that MSG couldn't necessarily refuse. Yeah. I think it was a difficult decision for them because American Express was definitely one of their founding partners. But it is what it is. It's economics at the end of the day. And so Chase ended up coming in and being the primary owner of all those marketing and sponsorship assets across the teams, the networks, the venues, so on and so forth. And they needed someone to come internally and help build that partnership for Chase because, again, they'd never done this before. Since I had been managing the partnership on the American Express side, MSG reached out to me about coming over and joining them on the property side to build that. So it was an incredible opportunity. At the time, it was the largest sponsorship that was not tied to naming rights because the Garden's never going to they're never going to sell a naming rights partnership. That's just never going to happen. So we had to find creative ways to sort of integrate Chase's name into that. So there's, the Chase bridges at Madison Square Garden. After the $1 billion renovation, there's these suspended bridges that hang above the court and ice and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was a great opportunity, but I was working on, at the time, one partnership, Chase. Now it was a massive partnership, and they ended up folding in Visa, which is their largest issuing partner, to allow them to leverage some of the assets that they had acquired. So I was managing Chase and Visa for a few years during the transformation at the Garden, and then Visa presented me with an opportunity to come out to San Francisco and work on their partnerships, their global partnerships. So FIFA, World Cup, the Olympics. They have a partnership with Fandango, Disney, so on and so forth. So I was out in San Francisco, for a couple of years. It was great. I just realized San Francisco wasn't a place I wanted to be super long term. Mm-hmm. And I actually was planning on making my way back to New York, but my parents, who still live here and are in Kansas City, sort of put the pressure on to maybe check out Kansas City. So I came back actually right as the World Series was ramping up. So obviously the city was on fire. Yeah. It was the most fun time to be here. And yeah, I went to the parade. I ultimately got connected with Kathy Nelson, President and CEO of the Sports Commission, and Brenda Tinnen, who's the VP and General Manager of Sprint Center. They knew that they were going to probably win the opportunity to host the 2017 U.S. Figure Skating Championships, and they needed an executive director in place to manage that project for all of the entities involved. And they ended up offering me that opportunity. And it was great because it was going to be a year project, January to January. It was going to allow me to sort of reacquaint myself with Kansas City and decide if this was a place I wanted to stay, or if not, I could go back to New York. I still had a great network there, and obviously it was a good gig still in the sports and sponsorship marketing world. So yeah, it ended up all working out. My mom is very thrilled. I'm back in Kansas City. Yep. And yeah, here for good. So it was a good path.
That's awesome. It's great to work, in the sports world in general, but I mean, especially kind of on the side where you are, planning some of these larger events and helping bring those things to Kansas City. There's everybody always talks about the economic benefits of, hosting these events. Mm-hmm. So what do you do? Kind of how do you pitch Kansas City to some of these big events that
Sure.
are looking for a home?
Yeah, so I mean, we're essentially competing against other cities. Cities that are our same size, cities that are smaller, cities that are larger. So it's definitely important that we differentiate ourselves. Some of the key factors that we often include in our bid materials are how well our organization in particular collaborates with all of the agencies across the city. So we'll often hear partners, whether it's the NFL or the Big 12 Conference or otherwise, comment on how well organized and seamless our execution is. They don't have to worry about anything. They know that, if the Sports Commission is involved, that we will navigate the communication with the city, all of the departments within the city, the police department, the fire department, EMS, we'll secure permitting, and it's just sort of, we're like a one-stop shop for them. Whereas in other cities, there's not necessarily that collaboration, so those partners are forced to work with a lot of different entities, which makes it challenging, right? It's just it's a more challenging environment for them when they come in here. We're a sports town. Our fans and our community always turn out for these events, and we can show that. I mean, we have, we can back that up. So, we always include photos and stats related to the Big 12 tournament and, all of the activity leading into that in and around Power and Light District. Obviously the photo for the Royals World Series parade is just a gem in our back pocket that we can pull out at any time. One of the things that is going to be very helpful in the future is the new airport. Oftentimes one of the pieces of feedback that we received was that there was concern about the airport. Just sort of the look and feel of it. We all know that it's an easy airport to navigate, yes. and it's great. And I understand, there's some people that are not excited about this change, but it is the doormat, the welcome mat to Kansas City, particularly for the events that we're working on. So it's going to help to have it just refreshed and refurbished a little bit. the downtown airport is always a great asset for us to include as well. We often fly teams directly into that airport and arrange transportation for them with police escorts from, that downtown airport to the hotels that they're staying at in and around Sprint Center or wherever. Midwest hospitality goes a long way. But really, I think that we've just been really successful in executing events, and then we can showcase that success, which just makes it easier for them to decide to come here for the first time because they've talked to their colleagues, across other conferences or national governing bodies or anything like that. And then once they've been here, our pitch becomes a little bit easier, and they definitely want to come back.
Being that we're in Hy-Vee Arena right now,
Yeah.
has the transformation of Kemper to Hy-Vee helped with keeping like the Big 12 or getting other things that are going on?
It's interesting. Any time that we can tout a facility that we may be able to access for either competition or practice, it's very helpful. Hy-Vee has been particularly busy, in a great way since it opened, especially on the weekends when they're hosting tournaments, youth tournaments, and other events all the time. So, to be quite honest, we haven't necessarily had the flexibility or the accessibility to Hy-Vee to be able to. We haven't leveraged it that much yet. That may change down the road, but we're bidding so far out. So we're sort of we were in an interesting cycle where we couldn't necessarily include it because it wasn't open yet. We always refer to it as a venue that's available for access. We have not had the opportunity quite yet to use it as much as we probably will in the future.
Well, I remember March 12th, I believe it was, Texas Tech girls were down there practicing,
Yes.
and I heard crying up here, and I'm like, what in the world's going on? And so, they have used it
Yes.
for practices and stuff like that, and, I know Bill Selfsprint brought KU in here quite a bit, and
Yes.
that's kind of been kept real secret.
Yeah.
But, because Lawrence is so close, and you would have everybody in, the world here. But
Yes. And
so.
a lot of times those access is contracted directly by the universities. So, when we're organizing the Big 12, we will help facilitate that, but more often than not with some of those details, the universities are sort of doing their own due diligence. They have their preferred places that they want their teams to practice. They have existing relationships in place and things like that. So that's something that doesn't necessarily fall directly on our plate from an organization standpoint.
And, it was unfortunate this year. COVID hit like right about the Big 12 tournament time. It's always one of my favorite events every year, whether I go to games or not, just kind of going down to the Power and Light area and everything that is going on. There's a lot going on at that time around there. And, it's always great to go down there. And
the weather always seems to be starting to turn
it
at that
does,
time.
yeah.
And everybody's like out and excited to be, gathering.
Yeah, and I know that helps Kansas City a lot, because a lot of people travel. It's kind of a central location for all the teams in the conference, as opposed to Dallas, which is a little further south, so it's a little further for some of the, like Iowa State and some of the northern teams. And obviously Lawrence and K-State, not very far away, Manhattan. So, it's always great. And I know that did they extend it 2 years?
Just one.
Just 1 year?
Yes.
Because we
one
missed
right
out
now.
this year?
Yes.
Okay.
So they basically tacked on an additional year to our existing contract with them.
Okay. Well, and then, obviously one of the biggest events this year was the Super Bowl parade.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, watching the award show, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but watching the award show video on YouTube and seeing the behind-the-scenes and how early you guys were planning that.
Yeah.
And, the quote, I think it was from Kathy Nelson talking about how the buses had to leave on Saturday, and she's like, we better not be jinxing
Philadelphia.
anything here.
Yeah.
Because we had to get the buses here. Just talk about
how worried was she going into the fourth quarter?
Well, and we were all at a party at my house, to be honest with you, and it was crazy. It was crazy. It's like an interesting dichotomy because we put so much time and energy into planning. But it's also very nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just it's a huge event. And so you're sort of like, you really, 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 really want it to happen. But like when you're also in the thick of it, you're like, oh my God, is this really, really, really going to happen?